Nowadays, we've been plagued though by something which is similar to mut'ah, which is known as ziwaj al-misyar, which is in many ways very similar. Very similar. So there are different ways that people practice this, and definitely we'll discuss the hukum of it. But what it essentially boils down to is that a man, he chooses to marry someone legally. So it's a legal marriage in the sense, it starts off a legal marriage, meaning you have a wali, right? Maybe some mahar, witnesses, etc. But the wife is to forfeit her right to wealth, maintenance, clothing, shelter, etc. All right? And mabit as well, so even staying with her husband. So essentially the wife has her own property, the husband has her own property, and the husband and wife, they meet up time to time just to essentially fulfill their desires, and that's it. There's no other responsibility. She doesn't cook for him, she doesn't feed him, she doesn't do anything like that. Just, which if you think about it, how is that different to mut'ah? Because what does mut'ah mean? Enjoyment. Zawaj Misyar has the same maqsad, has the same philosophy, has the same understanding as mut'ah. It's all about enjoyment. It's all about fulfilling your desires. But your people are using a loophole, a legal loophole, to basically justify Misyar. Having said that though, there are some scholars who say, well, technically, if you've fulfilled all the conditions, right? If you have a wali, if you have mahar, you have witnesses, you fulfill the major arkan, and therefore technically the marriage is valid. Okay, technically it's you can maybe argue is technically valid. Is it a good thing? Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Alithmu ma haka fi sadrik wa karihdan yattali alayhi an-nas." A sin is something which causes you unease in your heart, and you would dislike the fact that people know that you're doing that thing. Misyar, when people practice misyar, is it an open thing or is it a secret? It's done in secrecy. If it's done in secrecy, that means it's something you dislike the fact that other people are aware of. You don't like it when people know about it. So when people do misyar, it's all done secretly. Maybe the man is hiding it from his first wife. Maybe he's not married, but he's hiding it from his family, or is this the character of someone, a character of someone who aims to be a siddiq, an honest, upright, just person? Really? And the sad thing is, the people who are practicing this aren't your average Muslim down the street. They're the people who claim to be practicing Muslims. Practicing Muslims. And shockingly, some people, and I'm not afraid to say it, public figures. People who I've come across, any public figures, people who look up to as mashayikh, practice this. It needs to be called out, right? Because the fact that they do it, many of them, they do it themselves, they don't stop other people from doing it because they know they're doing it themselves, right? Such practices really don't fall in line with the understanding or the purpose behind marriage in our religion, right? Otherwise, in Zawaj Misyar, in essence, it's mut'ah, but you're just using a legal loophole to justify it. And then you have another issue which some people do as well, which is they marry but with the intention of divorce. And this is something that maybe is not commonly discussed in this country, but in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, this is something which is discussed quite a lot. I remember in Egypt, this was a thing, right? Because many students will go to Al-Azhar, right? And they'll be there for 7-8 years, and and they're young and they need to get married. But what do they do in the meantime? Right? So they get married, they find someone, another student, they get married, but they don't think, deep down inside, they don't think that that marriage will last after their studies finish. They don't intend to have children, and they come from different parts of the world. So when they finish their degree, he just divorces her. Now, he won't state that in the marriage contract. If you were to state that in the marriage contract, that I will divorce you after our studies finish, this is mut'ah, therefore haram and impermissible and invalid. But what about if it was his intention, but it wasn't explicitly stated? Meaning, they both know that it's not going to last very long, but it's not officially stated. Here, scholars do differ on this issue. I prefer the view that such contracts are invalid, because the person, al-manweek al-mashroot, yani that which you intend is equivalent to that which is explicitly stated. So if you intend to divorce, then it's as though you have stipulated that within the contract. And so therefore that will make it invalid. Okay, so these are all issues, I advise all brothers and sisters, stay away from. Right? Stay away from this. If you are struggling in your deen, Allah says, وَلْيَسْتَعْفِفِ الَّذِينَ لَا يَجِدُونَ نِكَاحًا حَتَّى يُغْنِيَهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. As for those who struggle to get married, keep chaste until Allah finds a way out for you. Don't look for legal loopholes to fulfill your shahwa and your desires. Right? Bani Israel were cursed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala due to this attitude and due to this way of approaching the law. Look at the story of the Sabbath. Allah cursed them as a result of them trying to trick Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What would you say to those who say that Misyar is preferable to zina? As I said, that Misyar, you could look at it from a purely legal perspective and use a legal loophole to say that it's allowed. Right? But when it comes to the issue of is it preferable to zina, is the person really at risk of falling into zina? This is the real question. Is the person really at risk of falling into zina? A lot of people can justify Misyar by saying, if I don't practice Misyar, I'll fall into zina. But the reality is they probably won't fall into zina. They're saying that, but again, it's just hawa, it's just desires. Right? They're saying that, but it's just hawa and desires. And so it's an easy route just to fulfill your desires. But again, when it comes to these matters, don't just look at it from a legal perspective. Is it technically allowed or not? There are many things that are technically allowed. Right? There are many things which are technically tahir and pure. Cow dung is technically tahir. Are you going to go roll around in cow dung now? Right? It's not a befitting thing to do. Right? There are many types of clothing that might be halal for you to wear. Are you going to dress around like a hippie or a we have to, when it comes to the deen and your application of deen, right, this code that you live by, you're adhering to this code to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do ihsan, to worship Allah in the best possible way, not to look for legal loopholes to justify your behavior and your actions. Right? So when people have these discussions, is this halal? Is this halal or is it haram or makruh? If it's makruh, then okay, I'm going to do it. It's not haram, akhi. Subhanallah. Is it wajib or is it sunnah? If it's sunnah, khalas, we don't have to do it. What sort of attitude is this? Right? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu udkhulu fi silmi kafa. O you who believe, enter into the religion wholly, completely. Right? Have the attitude of someone who is surrendering his life to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wants to be loyal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sincere and honest. Has wafa, this loyalty to the deen and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to utilize the deen for your hawa and your interests and your desires. Right? Wallahu alam. Since providing for two people in the UK is very hard, with living costs and both spouses work now, so the husband can't provide for her, is this not a Misyar marriage? Finances is a different issue. If it's just a matter of finances, where the man, for example, right, says to the wife, look, we'll get married, but I won't take care of your financial situation. She'll take care of it herself. But you still live together, you have children together. Okay, that can work. Right? But if you're living in a separate accommodation, I mean, surely it makes sense to live in one accommodation rather than two. If you live in two accommodations, separate accommodations, that's more expensive. Right? Again, let's just be honest and genuine. Be honest and sincere and genuine when it comes to these issues. Don't follow your hawa. Don't follow your lusts and your desires and use that to make it seem therefore it's all okay. Right? A lot of us do that. Right? Whether it's, for example, getting married without a wali's permission. Oh, in Hanafi fiqh it's allowed, so I'm going to do that. That's you following your hawa and your whims and desires. Or a sister who says, well, technically I'm only meant to obey you when it comes to intimacy, so therefore I don't have to do anything else for you. Hawa. Right? Manipulation, exploitation of the law in interest for our own whims. And we think we're doing, it's all fine. But it's not true submission to Allah. It's not truly surrendering to the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the spirit of the law. Wallahu a'lam.